All right. Hi, everyone. Great to see you. Eureka Cole, the church attorney here. I'm going to jump right in talking about today's notice that we have received as a nation, and many of you as nonprofit leaders have received notification of the freeze from the federal government of grants and loans. This absolutely, at a minimum, we think impacts nonprofits, perhaps churches as well. And what we're hearing as the information continues to be made known is perhaps even individuals, Medicaid, etc. This looks like something that's going to be challenged by the states, many states and organizations as well. But let's just sort of dive in and talk about this federal government grant freeze, apparently also a freeze on loans. So I think we know what a freeze is, but it's a temporary halt or a restriction on the distribution of federal funds. We have been under new leadership in the USA for just about a week, but it feels like much longer because of all of the sweeping changes that, frankly, many of us are trying to sift through, the over 300 or so executive orders, along with all of the impacts on the various agencies, federal agencies. So a lot of times a freeze is related to government budget issues or policy changes. And I think we're really seeing both of those things hand in hand right now. The truth is, we all know that the US has been operating at a significant deficit for a long time. We have what I think is about a $37 trillion deficit, and it grows incrementally day over day, week over week, month over month, over many administrations. And so it's been an issue for a long time. And thanks, good to see your hearts, glad you all are here. I'm thinking that some people are saying, on the one hand, that these kinds of drastic measures are necessary to bring our nation's budget back into some semblance of order. On the other hand, obviously, many people are concerned about the loss of these funds and the funding that has already been earmarked by congressional action for these specific purposes to aid individuals and organizations. So a lot of us are just going to be seeing how this thing plays out, but as we consider who does this impact, so definitely nonprofits. We had heard from the administration it wasn't intended to impact individuals, but as information continues to come out, it does seem that individuals also may be impacted. And I want to speak also to churches. So churches and nonprofits, if you are running programs like after school programs that may receive federal funding, programs that may involve any kind of financial support for, let's say, churches that run schools. And there are obviously a lot of universities that receive federal funding, other kinds of nonprofits, hospitals, etc. It's hard to see how these organizations aren't going to be impacted or said in the affirmative. It seems pretty clear that these organizations are going to have some sort of impact if you are currently receiving federal funding. The financial implications for churches and nonprofits, well, obviously potential gaps in funding for critical programs and initiatives. Most churches and nonprofits have already set their budgets. Most people aren't like waking up one day with a budget, right? It's those things that you plan over time. So for many nonprofits and churches, your budgets are already set. For many schools, for many universities, for many CDCs, right? Your budget is already set. So how are these gaps going to be filled? The reality that this may create some gaps. I did an interview earlier. So for those of you who are in the Faithful Foundations membership, you got to hear the full interview that I had today with an amazing attorney whose focus is on specifically on all things HR and all things regarding employment law. And we were talking about the EEOC and the possible overhaul or elimination, I don't know, of that organization, and just how there is this increased dependency likely to come for alternative revenue sources like donations. So in a lot of ways, churches have a unique advantage, if you can consider that, because their revenue is coming generally from the population, right? Generally from your membership, from people who attend, from tithes and offerings. So that's a real plus. But to the degree that there are these other kinds of ancillary organizations like schools or CDCs, et cetera, those entities may be impacted. So a lot of nonprofits, really, what are you going to need to do at this point? Prioritizing essential programming over any projects that may be planned or anything that could be seen as non-essential. Other kinds of considerations is diversifying funding sources. Again, it's kind of tough to do these things on the fly. It's hard to sort of pick up midstream and figure out new ways to get funding, but seeking private grants is one such option. Corporate sponsorships, or maybe even looking for more of those individual donations, and then increased focus on fundraising campaigns, more partnerships. I think that really at the season, looking for ways to work with others, coming together. It's kind of wild to think of this as a potential for increased unity, but I do think that the pressure for communities, for nonprofits, for churches to come together is really something that we're going to see now and continue in the future. I would also just encourage you to monitor policy updates on the grant freeze to the degree that you are able to connect with your leadership in your state. I think that that's also a positive way, but also communicate openly with those that you're serving. If you are impacted by the grant freeze, I think it's just important for you to talk with your constituency, to talk with the people that are potentially impacted, and maybe reach out for greater involvement and support from local communities. It's definitely a time where it's like, if you see something, say something. You don't want to be in a situation where you're suffering in silence. Like, this is not the time for that. So if your organization is impacted by the grant freeze, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to other churches, reach out to other organizations, reach out to other nonprofits, reach out to those people that you serve, to share the challenges that are being experienced. And I'll also say, I know that it's not always practical, but this is also the time where if your organization has savings, has any kind of long-term savings, has any kind of investments, this is the time where you may meet with your board and consider tapping into those things. We don't want to probably do it today, right, immediately, but you might want to be meeting with your board and considering what options you may have if this freeze continues for any duration. So I just wanted to hop in here. I appreciate you, those of you who've been able to join and get in on this discussion, and just know that we are stronger together. Nobody knows how this is all going to play out, but I do think that there is a reality that the more that we can come together, the more that we can support organizations and churches doing good things. Those of us who feel strongly around the good work of churches and nonprofits, I think that this is the time to rise and shine and really commit to church leaders, to commit to churches, to commit to faith-based organizations, to commit to nonprofits doing the good work that is very mission-driven. So I'm going to sign off with that. I hope that you will subscribe. I hope that if you are a church and you're not a part of Faithful Foundation's membership, please join today. Come into a community where you are supported, where we're discussing these issues, where you can really just get ahead of the curve. I think that's just going to be important today more than ever. So Erika Cole, the church attorney. Appreciate each of you. And we look forward to just continue to provide good insights as we move forward in a new administration and just kind of in a new way of doing things here in the U.S. Blessings to you. Bye.